I welcome you to the next chapter. In this, we'll have a look at the bishops, what are their peculiar characteristics, how they behave in the chessboard, how they can capture, how they can move. Now, as we saw in the initial setup of the chessboard, each side starts the game with two bishops. Now, one is placed on a dark square, one is placed on a light square. So, the one on f1 over which the arrow is, it is known as the light squared bishop. And the other one is known as the dark squared bishop. Now, the unique thing about the bishops is that they always remain on the same color where they were placed on the board in the beginning of the game. So, the dark squared bishop will always remain on a dark square and it moves along a diagonal. So these are the possibilities of the movement of the dark squared bishop. And similarly for the white squared bishop, these are the possibilities. So like the rook moves along a straight line, the bishop only moves along a diagonal. It can only go slanting, and that is the only movement it possesses. So I can just move the bishop around. This will always move to a white square, and this bishop will always move to a dark square. Right? I hope now we understand the movement of the bishops. To summarize, we have two bishops in the beginning of the game. Both always remain on the color where they were at the beginning of the game. They cannot ever change colors. They cannot go to a different colored square. Okay. And similarly, we'll also look at the restrictions which the bishop faces in its movements when there are some more pieces on the chessboard. We'll go to the next diagram. Okay. So here we have the light squared bishop and it is placed in the center of the board. And it is free to roll down on either sides of the chessboard if it is going towards the bottom. But if you see, its path is restricted if it wants to go upwards. So the bishop is blocked by its own pawn. We cannot capture our own pieces, neither can we jump over them when we are playing with the bishop. The only piece that can actually jump over either our own or the opponent's pieces is the knight. We'll get introduced to the knight shortly. And so we continue with this, and we see in this direction also the bishop is restricted by the pawn. So if I want to maneuver my bishop to 8 square, I have to find a way around the pawn like this. In your lesson, at the end of the video instruction, you will find a few exercises to develop your understanding of the movements of the bishop. I encourage you to try those once you complete going through the lesson. So we looked here at the restrictions faced by the bishop in that it cannot jump over its own pieces. Let us go to the next diagram and see how the bishop can make a capture. By now, we know the capture means replacing an opponent piece with our own in the chessboard. As we know that a single square can hold only a single piece. So I have just set up a very simple example to demonstrate how the bishop can make a capture. this diagram, we have two pawns which are on the black square. So as we have already learned, the bishop which is on the black color is able to capture both of them. So if it were my move, I have the option to capture either this pawn or the pawn on h6. Similarly, the pawns which are on the white squares can only be captured by the bishop which is light squared. So as we see, the bishop on d7 has both the pawns in its range, and it has the option to capture either of them as it feels fit. So I can choose to capture this pawn, or I can choose to capture this pawn. Okay, so I guess we are done this with this lesson, where we learned how a bishop can capture. We learned that a bishop can only capture the pieces which are placed on its own color. With that, we'll go to the next lesson, and I'll see you there.